Hello, my name's Andrew, and today we're doing a pros and cons video between two of the best barefoot cross training shoes you can buy, the Vivo Barefoot PRIMUS LITE and the Lono Flow. So back in 2017, the PRIMUS LITE was one of the first minimalist shoes I ever bought, and it pretty much became my go-to cross training shoe for road running and gym workouts for the next 7 years. But recently I reviewed this shoe called the Lono Flow, and at less than half the price, it's actually got some features that the PRIMUS LITE doesn't. So we're just gonna do a cage match between the two, and yeah, let's start with the reigning champ. So the Vivo Barefoot PRIMUS LITE has a nice wide toe box, has a squared off shape here, which is nice because some barefoot shoes can get a little bit pointy in the front. This one's the knit. They also have one that has a little bit more reinforcement, which is the original PRIMUS LITE. I tend to like this one for road running or just like lighter cross training or yoga type of stuff where you want something that's a little bit more flexible, not quite as limiting. But yeah, this upper it's very stretchy, but it is still pretty secure, which is something I like. It's not too loose because I have tried some barefoot shoes that are like all mesh and I'm just like sliding around in there. It's extremely light. It's around 230 grams. And I also really like the back of this shoe. It's very easy to slide into. It's soft, it's flexible, but then it's got a good heel lock back here if you're doing some faster track workouts and stuff like that. It does have reinforcement panels, some minimal reinforcement here, and then on the back. My original PRIMUS LITEs lasted for 7 years, so I have no doubts that the newer versions are gonna do really well. Also, they do have a glued sole, which most cross trainers have. And the thing with the glued sole is you just want to make sure they towel it off if you get it wet, and you want to keep it away from hot, dry air, which can dry out the glue and make it separate from the sole. But in general, yeah, these look really good in terms of durability. I really like Vivo's rubber. It's probably second to Vibram in terms of toughness. This has a 4mm sole. It's extremely flexible, all directions. It feels really great for running, whether you're doing longer runs or track workout type of stuff, faster intervals. It's great for HIIT stuff as well at the gym. I like the knit for all season use because it flexes and it opens up so that you get some breathability when the weather is hot, but then it kind of closes down as well, a little bit more than a mesh type shoe, so that when it's colder, you're not getting as much air or maybe even a little bit of rain misting coming in, especially if you have a couple layers of socks in there for just some extra warmth. In terms of the tread pattern, it's got some decent grip. For roads, you've got some more durable panels here at the key wear spots and then around the edges as well of the shoe. Like I said, my original ones lasted for 7 years. And they're still going. They've got some tears on the upper, which, you know, can happen, but I think Vivo's gotten better with just putting reinforcement in the right places so that the shoes don't wear out, and they've been around for, God, I don't know, a decade or more, so they really get the durability down. And then one last thing about the upper, it doesn't rub anywhere, which is really important for doing faster stuff and long mileage as well, because there's nothing worse than getting out on a run and then the collar of the shoe is starting to rub your ankle raw. All right, so that's the PRIMUS LITE, but let's take a look at the Lono Flow. So this is a really similar shoe, also has a very nice wide toe box, maybe slightly more pointy just towards the tip, but it does have this extremely stretchy upper material. It's a little bit more open, so I'd say the Lono Flow is a bit better for hotter weather than the PRIMUS LITE knit. But yeah, it's really comfortable. It's got a ton of stretch to it. It's got a little bit of reinforcement at the front, but it's a very soft material, so it doesn't limit flexibility, or you don't really feel anything on the top of your foot rubbing, which can happen. I had that happen a little bit with the PRIMUS LITE, the regular version, just because it's got a harder reinforcement, but with the knit, it's mostly open except for this toe point here, so I really didn't have anything rubbing with that shoe either. In terms of the lacing, also has laces on it, and you can slip into the back, but they've added this little nib here, which is kind of nice. It just adds a little bit more softness on your heel for longer or faster type of stuff. Also, a slip-in upper, it's just slightly easier to slip in than the PRIMUS LITE knit, because it's just got a little bit less structure. There's a little more structure on the PRIMUS LITE. And then one thing I do like about the Lono Flow that the LITE doesn't have is the laces are kind of off to the side. So as the shoe bends, you're not going to hit this as much. It's not a huge thing, but I think it's just kind of a cool little feature. They've got lace locks here, which just hold the laces well in place. But, you know, the PRIMUS LITE knit is pretty much the same thing. You can adjust the tension at different points. So again, they're pretty similar there. One thing the Lono Flow has that's a little bit different is this side reinforcement here. I think because it is a more stretchy material, I'm glad they've added this because it kind of puts both shoes on par in terms of support. Either one, they're not a high support shoe. Like the original Primus Lite is going to be a little bit more geared towards cross training specifically, where you're going side to side because it's got more panels here. But either shoe is good for light cross training or running. And then in terms of the back, also got some support here, and then the panel just acts as a little bit of reinforcement on the side as well. I think in general the Primus Lite knit is a little bit more durable. It just feels a little more hardy, but actually interestingly this is slightly heavier. It's 20 grams more. It's 250 versus 230, but not a big deal. Both shoes are super light. In terms of the sole, it's got a 6mm sole versus 4mm for the Lite, so slightly thicker. And then it does have just a tiny bit of padding. So it's kind of nice for someone who just wants a shoe that's really light, really flexible, but maybe just has the tiniest amount of padding, just if they're coming from a cushioned shoe or they just don't want to go 100% barefoot. In terms of flexibility, it's very close to the Primus Lite, a super agile shoe. You can bend it in really any direction. But the grip pattern's a little bit different. They've got slightly thicker lugs here for a little bit more traction, like if you're on track and you want just a little bit more grip. They kind of work like mini spikes, which is cool. I was doing some 400s and just sprinting stuff, and they worked really well. The Primus Lite is great, and I didn't really have any problems slipping. I find generally on road, you really don't need that much tread because the road kind of is the tread, you know what I mean? It's got a lot of texture to it, and I don't find the shoes having any problem slipping no matter what texture I've got on the bottom or tread pattern. But another cool thing that Lono does is they've just got a little extra nib section here, which again acts sort of like mini spikes. It doesn't make a huge difference, but I did find when I was taking off for doing sprinting, it just added a little bit of extra grip, especially when I was just starting to accelerate. They've also got the same thing in the back. Although one thing I will note about this sole, I think these nibs are gonna wear off pretty quickly. I haven't put a ton of mileage on them, but yeah, I just suspect because there's less surface area here. But again, I don't think it matters that much for roads, especially as long as you're not on super slippery terrain. That is one thing that Lono said they wanted to improve with the next version of the shoe, is just to make the rubber a little bit more tacky on wet, slippery surfaces. So that's a point where I think the Vivo Barefoot rubber works just a little bit better. And then one other thing I want to mention about the Lono Flow is this divot here. I think this is a really clever idea, and I hope that Vivo Barefoot incorporates this in the future, because what happens, especially with glued soles, is that this is the flex point, right? So if you keep doing this over and over again and you don't have a divot like this, it can cause separation, you know, because it's kind of putting stress on the material and causing it to crimp in weird ways. But yeah, I guess one last thing that we should talk about is the insoles for these. They both have very similar insoles. Here's the Vivo Barefoot one. It's a recycled insole, and you know, very flexible if you just want a little bit more padding, or it's like a really wet day and you want to get your foot off the bottom of the shoe. It's a good thing to have around. And the Lono insole is very similar. Actually, it's just slightly thinner, I think, which is nice because the shoe itself is already slightly padded, but again, recycled. And then another major point about Lono that I really like is that it's made from 80% recycled materials. So this shoe actually will decompose in landfill conditions. So overall, you can't really go wrong with either shoe. I think it's just a matter of your budget, and do you want something that's a little bit more padded and kind of casual friendly like the Lono Flow, or are you willing to pay a premium for a more technical shoe like the Vivo Barefoot Primus Lite that has max ground feel and flexibility and a long-term reputation for durability as opposed to an unknown brand? For me personally, the Vivo Barefoot Primus Lite still wins because I'm a ground feel junkie. I want the maximum amount of flexibility and just connection when I'm running. But yeah, if you'd like to support the channel, I put referral links down below to coupon codes for both brands, as well as my website barefootwear.org, where you can browse and filter more products, and my zero drop transition video if you want to learn more about barefooting. Finally, if you have a question about the Vivo Barefoot Primus Lite or the Lono Flow or barefoot shoes in general, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time. Peace.